I would say my government cheese S meal growing up, and then even when I first started learning how to cook, is a thing that we call black people nachos.
The reason we call the show Government Cheese is because, for those who know what government cheese is this government subsidized food that fairly cheap, but, people who had it, the reason they're nostalgic about it is because they made it into these amazing delicacies. Like the grilled cheese sandwich. That's the one that people always go to. So it's essentially, Hampton is someone who's very good at making something out of nothing, so to speak. And so my mom was a great cook, but she would take fairly basic things, like jollof rice was the thing that have you had jollof rice before?
Absolutely, I love jollof.
My mom, and we were not particularly well off, and I would go in the kitchen and she would have like the rice, tomatoes, some oil, some peppers, some onions, but it tasted like there were
1,000 ingredients.
1,000 ingredients in that jollof rice. Do you know what I mean? We would have fried plantain with it as well, and and maybe some chicken, but it was chicken that, like, I'm salivating. That's terrible. I could barely get the words out. But, the way the meat would fall off the bone. And these were, like, we would literally go to the market, buy a live chicken, come home, slaughter the chicken, like, do the whole thing. And it would just, like, thankfully, I've lived a life where I've had a lot of nice food. And just nothing compares. Nothing compares. And a fairly basic, limited ingredients, and it's that making something incredible out of barely anything. But what were yours?
I would say my government cheese S meal growing up, and then even when I first started learning how to cook, is a thing that we call black people nachos.
Okay.
I'm talking about addicted to them. So it's basically a rendition of nachos, but it's with Doritos instead of regular chips. You can get, so like I said, when I used to DoorDash, I would shop almost every day, but I would go grab like a half a pound of meat or a ground beef, but anywhere from like $3 to $4. You grab a bag of chips for like $2 or $3. And then you get nacho cheese. And it either has to be the one that comes directly in a can. For me, it has to be like Totino's or like something that's like
you're salivating. I can see it. It's like he's doing the same thing.
So you got to get the ground beef, nacho cheese. I'm a big tomato olives person, fresh lettuce. And what I used to do is I used to throw it in the oven after I put everything on top. And then like get like a caramelized, like the cheese. Even Doritos in the oven, they get like this like hard, super crunchy, caramelized taste. And it has to be the purple bag of Doritos. It's the only bag of Doritos that I'll eat. Family style dinner. We just throw it on the table. And this is the thing we used to do religiously, maybe like 3 or 4 times a week.
I think it's one of the reasons why we are so creative. It's this thing of necessity being the mother of invention. I don't think anyone's going to argue with us. The silver lining, the upside is these things that we create, whether it's our music or our fashion or our food. There's so much that we bring because of the necessity, the need to not only survive, but to thrive in a given situation. Because you're not just talking about something that, okay, let's just get some food in the belly. You're like delicately putting it all. I remember my mom doing the same as well. It was lovingly done because we know that quality of life is built around not just let me get this food in my belly, but how we treat ourselves. Love, having that love component.
Let me ask you this. Since your personal life is very similar to the role that you play, right? Do you feel like what you have done and what you've been through in life has shaped you to be ready for this role or to be ready for this moment in general?
They feed off each other, right? Because, the life I've lived up until this point tends to govern the things I gravitate towards, because the life I've lived demonstrates my moral compass, my values, the things that I gravitate towards. So being a Christian, being a father, being a husband, being someone who is a dreamer in many ways, all of these are themes that you see in government cheese. And so that's why the values that I value are definitely in government cheese, because that's what I want to put out into the world. It's for me, storytelling is probably, well, it's one of the most potent ways to culturally edify humanity. Playing Hampton, even though he's not necessarily the kind of father I would want to be. He's a bit more questionable. But I also love that he's a really human, flawed guy. His relationship with God is one, I truly believe there's no faith without doubt. And he is someone who is trying to figure it out. And I just think that that's incredibly relatable as well.
I think I asked specifically because I resonate with that a lot, because I feel like fighting was, without me knowing, was a training session to get me ready for this, right?
Wow.
Because when you are in the midst of fighting, and when you are fighting at one of the highest levels, and you have to make weight, you have to focus on what you eat, why you eat what you eat,
right.
And you fall in love with the actual art of food itself. So while I was cutting weight, I would be watching the Food Network, and I would be literally wrapped up in towels and mummy, and I would be sweating like crazy. And only thing I'll be watching is people make smoothies, or people make.
Did that not make you more hungry?
It did,
wasn't that
but
torturing yourself?
I ate through them, so I ate vicariously through them. It gets to a point where you can eat through somebody just watching them, because I understand if I was to eat it right then and there, that I won't be able to achieve my goal, and I won't be able to actually provide for my family. But I can watch you eat.
That's so interesting, because I can relate to that, because in my industry, my job is to observe humanity. If I'm going to hold a mirror up to humanity in terms of storytelling, I have to understand people. And so seeing what works and what doesn't work is something that I'm observing all the time. So for instance, with my marriage, it's like my wife and I, we met when we were teenagers. We got married when she was 20, I was 22. We decided that we were never going to be apart for more than 2 weeks. Why? Because we're looking at people around us, and to be in a relationship, you need to be in proximity of each other. In our industry, we saw that there were so many actors. Oh, they're going off to do a film in Acapulco. He's doing a film in wherever. They're apart for months on end. Being apart is not, the Bible says it, it's not good for a man to be away from his wife. Our marriage has, I believe, protect me from so much, so many avenues I may have gone down. But in terms of seeing that in my life, because, we have this theme in the show of God talking to Hampton through these events that happen in the show. There's a flood right at the beginning of the first episode. There's a moment he gets swallowed by a catfish, not unlike Jonah and the whale. And these ways that God speaks to him. Like, God gave me the name of every single one of our children before they were conceived.
I love that. Yeah.
Which is so bonkers. But where God is so merciful, my wife and I, to be vulnerable with you for a second, we had 2 miscarriages between our firstborn and our secondborn. And so despite, especially the second one was really painful. It was one of those moments, I don't know if you had this with your wife, where you're in so much pain and the temptation is to retreat into your corners and rather than go through it together. That was one of those moments, but we actually grew stronger through it. And then we eventually had Caleb. But the craziest one was when God told me we were going to have Zoe. We were at church the night before and I heard that name. In the same way I'd heard Asher, Caleb, and Peniel. And I didn't want to tell my wife because I was like, we're good. And then I went in to see my wife the morning after I'd got this name. And I said, I've got something to tell you. And before I could say it, she had the name Zoe circled in her journal. What Hampton experiences in the show, even though it's fantastical, I completely relate to.
I'm relating to everything, literally every single thing you're saying.
Wow.
And I think it's only, I feel like it's only crazy to somebody who hasn't been through the same things, right? Or something similar. In 2019, I had a fight lined up, or I got a fight offer in Miami. The fight was for $500. It was in like a very, very, very small venue in the middle of Miami, and it was against a very tough guy. And right before, why, I don't know, but right before I left out, I told her, when I get back, we get married and we gonna have a child.
Wow.
And she was like, I've been waiting for you to say it.
Wow.
She was like, I literally was thinking about this. I was gonna come to you and have a conversation, but she was like, I didn't know if you were ready, but I'm ready. So when I came back, the very first time we tried, we got pregnant. Wow. The same day we found out we was pregnant, I got a call from Bellator and they offered me a 6-figure contract. And when we had the conversation about the baby, once I was in Miami about to fight, I was calling her and I was asking her, like, how are we going to do this? Like, where are we going to get the money from? Where are we going to get the finances from? Where are we going to get the financial stability in general? And the second we found out we was pregnant, we ended up getting the Bellator contract. Wow. So it's like I've had so many times of that in my life, like even to speak on specifically food reviews, right? We got reached out to by People versus Food. So at this point, I've been on social media for maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years. And my entire social media presence is me cooking for my wife when I'm getting home from the gym, or me cooking meal prep and me just recording it, just to get used in front of the camera while I have social anxiety. A year and a half span, almost 2 years, I gained 1 million followers. And I was cooking every day. My wife came to me and she said, hey, a YouTube channel called People versus Food reached out and they want you to come on. And they had 20 million subscribers on YouTube. And their entire premise was to do like food reviews or like food tastings and record people's reactions. They reached out and I asked her while we were in the kitchen, we were in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. We were on food stamps. We were living in Vegas. Wow. And I asked her and I said, what would I post on my page that make people not only actually come and watch us, but actually follow us? And she was like, post food reviews. She's like, you eat food all day anyway. You record your food anyway. You might try your own food and review other spots. By the time I got on the show, I went from 1 million to 8.8 million within 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
In 3 weeks from posting every day. We had that conversation. I prayed about it and God was telling me, this is the thing that you're supposed to do. And it's supposed to be in this moment. Why posting food reviews? Why posting one every day? I have no idea, but it led to exactly where we are now. I learned throughout our relationship and throughout, I think, life in general, is that if you try to mold something for you and somebody else without that person, you're only molding it to what you believe that person wants. Right. And it's from a, like you said, from an egotistical standpoint or a masculine standpoint, what you think that person might want, or what you think the version of yourself that person might want isn't the version that they want in reality. And the only way you can find out what version of yourself works best with that person is to do it cohesively. I feel like if it wasn't a thing to where we did it together, not only would my journey look completely different, every time I post any video or anytime I post anything in general, not only do I pray about it, but I have a conversation with her and I show her the video. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? How does this look? And it's not necessarily a validation point, but it's, we did it together. It's not I was already here and then I found her or she found me. It was a collective decision to, how are we going to get out of the position that we're in as far as finances, as far as providing for our children, as far as not being at a level that we want to achieve to or actually be at the moment? How do we get there, and how do we get there together? We can do it. We can get there separately, and I can go separate and go grab all of the tools and come back. But the foundation won't be as strong as if we go together.
That's so interesting, because I can relate to that, because, you know, in my industry, it's a very, very expensive endeavor. Even a low budget movie, you're talking at the very least 6 figures. You are to raise money to basically say these 100 pages I have are worthy of your millions of dollars, or it's worthy of the marketing, or worthy of getting that actor. But yeah, you know, the reason why I am so fascinated by the art of mixed martial arts is the sheer amount of skills you have to be able to get in that ring. And you know, I remember when Paul Hunter approached me about Government Cheese. I wasn't aware of him that much as a director, but I was aware of his work. I then went and watched all these incredible music videos and commercials, and his skill set was through the roof. And to the point about skill set, I just knew that even though he hadn't done a TV show yet, his ability to capture imagery, his ability to tell story in short form, it was his skill set that gave me the confidence to go, wow, there is something here that I want to be a part of, because what he already has as a skill set is completely undeniable. But yeah, people get quite surprised that it's something I watch more than is probably healthy, you know. But you know what it is? I find it, my wife always gets freaked out when I say this, I find it relaxing. Making movies, making TV shows is incredibly stressful, and you can go years without seeing a result. Doing what you used to do as a mixed martial artist, you train hard, you get in that ring, and it's likely that you're going to get a result. Every now and again, there's a split decision, but you're going to walk away, your work having
Pays off there.
paid off. You know, I can go 10 years. You know, it took me 10 years to get Bass Reeves made.
But do you feel like after you do a movie or after it comes out, do you feel like you get that same result or that same feeling of accomplishment, regardless of how the movie goes?
Absolutely. That's why I say, even though it's frustrating how long it can take to get a project off the ground, standing in the middle, standing your ground, the feints, the demonstration of confidence, force, stamina, which is why I'm curious about the cardio component. That's what gets it done.
I think it's very similar, like you say, not only your industry, but just life in general. I think it's a very fine line of I'm not backing up, I'm putting my feet in the ground. I'm not going back at any second. Right. But the second that you bite on a feint or you bite on this opportunity looks better than this one, or this opportunity makes more sense here. The second you bite on that, or like, I want to offer you this. Yeah. It's like people can see that. And they can see those flinches. Correct. And it's people at the highest level of almost anything can read energy, and they can read exactly what you're thinking without you even having to say a word.
Okay, so you're asking me my top 5.
Your top 5 UFC fighters or MMA fighters of all time.
Gaethje, I've never seen him not have a great fight, barn burner of a fight. So he's probably the most entertaining fighter I've ever seen. Yeah. Poirier would probably be my
Gaethje, Poirier.
Poirier would be my number 2. Just the fact that he came up as a fat kid who then dropped and then is insane to me. I've got to shout out my Nigerian brothers. I would probably go Adesanya.
Easy.
Cardio amazing at his height.
For sure.
Get into the 3rd round, not even breathing, let alone
thinking about it.
Let alone what happens in the championship round.
And just sniper in general. Sniper, tactician, showman.
Yeah. Showman, and he loves his Nigeria, as does Usman, Kamaru Usman.
So that's 4.
That's 4. And then I'll go Ngannou. Because what he did in that last fight, both knees gone. What did success look like to you before you got it in relation to what it now is for you?
I would say success in the beginning was making sure my kids were safe and financially taken care of, to the point where I didn't have to, after every meal, have to worry about where the next meal is coming from. In my mind, when everything first started, as long as I can do that, I'm good. I would say now success looks like setting up longevity for them, and setting up longevity for myself and for my wife. And I have a marker that if I can go on at least one vacation a year, I made it in life. Wow. Like if I can take a week or 2 weeks where I don't have to worry about where money is coming from or where the next step in life is coming from, if I can just turn my mind off for a week or 2 weeks, I made it. Wow. Yeah, what would you say?
For me, success always looked like financial security. I didn't ever want to have a 9-to-5 job. I wanted to be able to have financial autonomy, not just security, but autonomy. I had an incident in 2008. It was my wife and I had moved to the States from the UK in 2007. That was followed by the economic crash in 2008 and a massive writer's strike, which led to me not working for 14 months. We had 2 kids, we had a 3rd on the way. And we basically ran out of money. And I remember having $3 left in my wallet. And I remember being stood in the kitchen with my wife, going to my wallet, taking out $2, giving it to her, and just having the $1 in my wallet and thinking, okay, I'm about to, is it Trader Joe's? Is it CVS? Wherever I'm going to go get a job. And this is after I'd been here a while. I'd just done a George Lucas movie called Red Tails. That was my last job. So I'm arriving in Hollywood thinking I've made it. Then 14 months, no work. And that night we went to bed and we were both sat there obviously quite stressed by the financial situation. In that moment, because of what we were going through and the fact that we were going through it together, weirdly, I was more in love with my wife in that moment than any of the, I don't know, at that point, was it 10 years that we'd been married? And we were so close because we had nothing, but it made us really realize and recognize that we had each other. And I was blown away by the fact that we were enough.
That's more valuable than anything. That's worth $1 billion, $1 trillion.
You are the richest person in the world if you are blessed enough to have found someone with whom you feel completely comfortable in spite of the challenges in life. And, we've gone on to accrue money and all the things that I originally thought of as success, but it is very clear to me that success, wealth, being truly blessed is about your family and the people around you. Of course, you need money to keep things going, but that has never left me, and it has remained true, that true wealth is having your family close and being in love.
I couldn't agree more.